I was giving a presentation at Mötesplatz Open Access, Meeting Place Open Access in Malmö earlier this year, where I was talking a little about the benefits of putting your work under open access in the way that you can reach a new audience, perhaps, that you not only your fellow researchers and scientists. So I am the CEO of Wikimedia Sverige, and we are working a lot with Creative Commons licenses because we have that in place in the projects. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that later. This talk from Mötesplatz Open Access evolved a little bit to, we had another presentation where Margareta also joined, where I talked about open access and open data and how that fits in. And that's also something that the National Research Council is investigating, so to speak. They are having a draft out where they are thinking about the research data, what sort of license should that have, and for people to be able to reuse. And I'm going to touch a little bit upon that too in this. But this is sort of the background for this entire presentation. So, all right, I did it. So I said Wikimedia, but you have probably never heard about that, but you have heard about Wikipedia. So what is the connection? So Wikimedia Foundation is the non-profit organization in the United States that are running the Wikipedia servers and some other projects also. And I'm going to touch upon them too. So that is one of their projects. A little bit confusing with the names, Wikipedia. And Wikimedia Sweden, we are the local chapter here in Sweden doing stuff that you are doing, that you can best do in Sweden rather than online, where we most often use volunteers. Wikipedia itself is freely licensed, but what does that mean? So we use a Creative Commons license, and there are plenty of free licenses, and they vary a little bit in what you can do with them. But I think the most important part, if you want something to be freely licensed, is that you're explicit, that you're actually saying what license am I distributing this under. And I can't stress that enough because it's really fundamental. Creative Commons itself, they're talking about 3 layers of licensing, but it's really more or less just one license. But the layers they're talking about is that it is human readable, that is that any person can understand what it means. There's also a legal text that is a lot more complex, but what states what you actually can do. But in many cases, it's quite obvious. But sometimes when you're in the gray area, you can go into the legal text. But the third, and perhaps the part that hasn't been implemented so much yet, but shows a lot of promise, is that licenses can be machine readable, which means that you can be discovered on the web and you can find things on the web very easily. So it might be important when you're having a solution with licensing to think about all these 3. Sometimes you only think about the legalese, the legal text, because that's the fundament of the license. But if no one can understand it, if it's not human readable, well, then what's the purpose? No one is going to reuse it because not everybody is a lawyer or has access to one. So all these 3 layers of Creative Commons are very important. And the idea with Creative Commons, it's as I said, it's a simple idea. And the thing is that you want to share your work with other people because you're perhaps already done with what you have. You're not going to work with this data anymore, or you want to reach out with your ideas and get them to spread in the society, and build upon that. And this has a lot of similarities from history. I think he said it in some different sort of way, but it's this, that you're building upon the shoulders of giants. And of course, back when Isaac Newton said something like this, they didn't have explicit licenses, but the idea was that you should be able to build upon each other's work. And I think that is sort of the entire idea within science itself, that you're not starting from scratch. You're building upon someone else's ideas, whether it's on articles or if it's on data or observations in other ways. And that is also sort of the basic idea behind open access, trying to be explicit about that you should share this, what you have created and what you have discovered. So that's why my presentation in the beginning said Creative Commons loves open access, because it makes it explicit. And I think if you read upon the Budapest Declaration from open access, you can see many similarities with some of the Creative Commons ideas and what I'm going to show later on. But they were not that explicit because Creative Commons wasn't around, so sometimes it can be a little bit fuzzy what that actually means. So within Creative Commons, they have made a sort of framework to give you the choice on what license to choose. And I'm going to go through that a little bit. And the most common thing is Creative Commons by or attribution, which is stated by this symbol. And it is in all of the Creative Commons licenses, except one. I'm going to take that one last because that's an exception of the Creative Commons case. But what it actually means is that if you are reusing some Creative Commons license, that is, you have to attribute to that person in the manner they want to. So here's a little example that I'm going to show you later on. The image itself is by Creative Commons, so I said it's by Creative Commons. So it's not that hard. It's very easy to reuse things with Creative Commons by. The next step in this suite is share alike, and this one is probably one of the harder things to grasp your head around, because it's a little bit different. It's sort of what's in copyleft in the open source movement. It has the same meaning. And what it means is that if you reuse something with the share alike license, your work should also be in the same license. So it means that it's sort of contagious. If you remix something with a share alike license, you have to release it under share alike license. It's also very powerful because I think that's, and I'm going to go into that a little bit later with the non-commercial. It sort of does what you want with the non-commercial without being having the gray areas that the non-commercial clause has. So I think that is very powerful to use the share alike if you want your works to stay free, because it will stay free. That's exactly what the licenses are saying. The next thing is non-derivatives. And that means that if you're reusing this work, you cannot change it or alter it in any way. And this is more restrictive than you really think, from the beginning. It more or less says that you cannot reuse this in social media, because if it is an image. Because if you upload an image on Facebook, it's gonna crop it in various ways. If you're on mobile, if you're having it in the feed or something like that. So in a sense, you can say if something is non-derivatives, you cannot use it on Facebook or Twitter for that part, or Instagram, or perhaps Instagram, because they are always square if it was a square from the beginning. But if it wasn't, you cannot crop it. So I think this one is very good for if you want to preserve some sort of artistic integrity, if it's images. But it can also be very useful if you have some sort of text that you do not want someone to change the meaning in. You want to preserve it in this very specific way. It makes it a lot harder to reuse. But it's available for one who wants it. The one who is most problematic, I think, because it's so hard to understand, is the non-commercial. Because you always end up in this sort of, what is commercial use? What it means is, if you license it with a non-commercial clause, is that you cannot reuse it in a commercial context. And then you have all this gray area. Well, I have a blog, and I do have some ads on it, which gives me some sort of revenue. Well, I don't think myself as being a commercial, but actually you are. And Wikimedia Deutschland actually thought this was so hard to understand, and they had to explain it over and over again. So they made a little brochure about it, where they explain how exactly where the non-commercial can be used. It's available here in Swedish if you want it. It's available on the web in at least German and English. So if you want to download a PDF, I think the link is... There might be a link here on the inside. If not, just email me or tweet me and I will give you the link.